I was saying it's 250. I don't know. I haven't heard of it.
It's ugly 100 degrees either.
Yeah.
Not that far away.
Greg's daughter wanted to go to the zoo.
I texted her.
Only 5 days.
Anybody mic'd up?
Yeah.
The heat stroke there.
Whenever you're ready, Scotty. We're good. Everybody good? All right, good evening to everyone. Hard to say, but hard to believe it's July 1 already. We have the City of Mount Vernon Council meeting called to order. Not aware of any changes to the agenda we have in front of us.
So I'll move approval of the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, communications. Anybody that would like to address the council? I don't really see anybody in the woods, so we'll move on to the consent agenda, approval of council minutes from the June 17, 2019 meeting.
I would move approval of the council minutes for June 17th.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is ordinance 5/6/2019A, adopting chapter 153 demolition regulations in the municipal code of Mount Vernon, Iowa. This is the third and final reading. As Chris has mentioned, the agenda, not anything has been brought to his notice, so unless somebody has any questions, we can check this box and be done with it.
I'd just be glad that we close this issue that's been out there for, before I was on the council, 4 years ago.
Long time, for sure. And I think there was a lot of time, energy placed into it, it wasn't just rushed through.
With that being said, I would move approval of ordinance 5-6-2019, the third ballot.
I will second.
Comments, roll call please, Sue?
Brodebush,
Yes.
West,
Yes.
Weisler,
Yes.
Herman,
Yes.
Rose.
Has anybody checked the website, seen if that list was on there?
It's been on there for,
Oh, has it?
since about Tuesday or Wednesday
Okay.
following the last council meeting.
Okay. Anything else? Good. Okay. Resolutions for approval, 7-1-2019A, making award of the construction bid for security equipment improvements for the Lester Burge Family Community Wellness Center project. Chris?
The winning bidder, we had two bidders, the winning bidder being Tri-City Electric at $94,635. It's about just under $6,000 better than the engineer's estimate, so.
Good.
Is an individual security card part of this package, or was
So,
that a purchase of the member? Who's picking up that?
So
Is it
the-
200, 300?
well, so it all kind of semi goes together. When we picked out the security package, we had to determine what operating software and security software that we were going to be utilizing, because that's what the door readers will recognize. So what was bid will fit the operating software that we've chosen for the facility, so that you'll get one card, and that one card will let you into the doors. It will also check you in during the day. So from the hours of whatever it ends up being, 6 to 10, you will check in at the front desk. You just scan your card underneath the little reader there at the front desk, and that's how we know you're in the building.
Because the front door's open.
Correct.
If you come in some other.
After
back
10
door or
o'clock to
whatever.
6 o'clock in the morning, those that have access, their card will let you in the front door. So,
And I assume you don't have to scan your card, right? That first
No,
scan
so
gets you to the building.
when you scan at the front door, that lets us
Yep.
know that you're in the building. And the goal, again, with the 24/7 access facility is that before the part-time staff leaves at 10 o'clock at night, or whoever the staff person is, they should be able to pull up on their computer who's still in the building and whether or not they should be there or not be there, so.
Yep.
But we want wanted to try and limit it to one card, so that's why the security package is that actually, we've been working on this for almost 6 months. So we had to start the process from scratch, basically.
And so to Tom's point, I think the membership comes with one card.
The
like,
membership
per
will
family
card-
member, and then there's a, like, if I remember right, there was a replacement fee.
Correct, so you will get a card, and if you have a family, you'll get up to 5, right? 6 cards, because one of the rules will be is do not give your card to your child, because you have different.
Right, because there's different access for
Different
an adult
rules.
versus a.
Yes.
Yep.
And then, the first card is part of your membership, subsequent cards are replacement.
Sorry, I felt like I should come up and support Chris here. But he's right, yeah, so the card, when you swipe, it'll bring up a picture on the out monitor, so we'll be able to identify who that individual is. So in the pool, we take a picture of you, we put the picture on the card. We felt we would want to reuse these cards, so we didn't feel we wanted to do that. So the card will be just a basic fob card like we have here, and it'll just be, won't have any picture on it, it'll have an identification number, and it'll have a name of the facility. So in case somebody does lose it, hopefully it's returned, or we can identify that that is the card that is lost. So, but when they do swipe, and the swiper, your picture will come up on the screen, so we'll know exactly who you are and who's supposed to be using that card.
Cool.
Coupled with the 41 cameras that will be installed with this, we should be good.
We're nice, chief.
Mhm.
So after hours, if you swipe it, who looks at the picture?
Well, no one does, but we can always go back and identify. So you'll have people that are looking out for the building. We're not gonna catch everybody, just like we would catch everybody in other situations, but if we do find out that you're not using the appropriate card, then you have the right, we have the right to suspend your membership or expel your membership. And that'll be written into the contract. So we're hoping that people will use it appropriately, but if they don't, we're hoping we can catch them. And if we can't catch them, that's just part of the game, I guess.
But the police department will be able to monitor the facility from here. And so, for the most part, if they look like, you know, if you have, my 13-year-old son has my card and he's in the building and the police department looks and goes, well, that kid's definitely not 18 years old. We will be able to go back in and see who scanned in. And like I said, the cameras are fixed, but the reason that we have 41 is so that we have every angle, and they modeled it for us. And we get to, they have to come back in and move the lenses twice on their dime. So we have every angle on this building with the exception of like a couple of corners.
And the dressing rooms for the.
So the dressing rooms are closed at night.
Just getting that on
Yes,
record,
yes.
I'm just saying.
The bathrooms are,
So safety is our concept of when we close the building. We're gonna flush all the rooms and make sure they're empty. We're gonna lock the appropriate rooms so that people can't hide inside the building. And then there will be access to obviously restrooms, because that's part of code. So that's why we have the family change rooms. They're not pitted rooms where you can hide around a corner. They're basically, you can look in there and you can see what's in there before you go in.
Yeah.
So, and then we have the 2 restrooms upstairs, which are just one-room restrooms. And so all of that, we feel comfortable. We'll be able to maintain the services we need to, and then also be able to shut down the areas that we need to. Then, if somebody wanted to rent a space after hours, our policy will be that they have to rent it with a staff person on board. So if Jamie wanted to come in and rent the turf room at midnight and for a batting cage or whatever, we would rent that to you, but we'd also say the additional cost is gonna be a staff person because you're renting it after hours.
That's the way it
I just
should
think
be.
that's fair.
I think that's very fair.
Yeah. So, that's our steps. Sorry, I was gonna add, so we have the ability to audit at night too as well. So I doubt there are gonna be hundreds of people scanning their cards from 10 o'clock at night till 6 o'clock in the morning. But one of the things we're gonna do when we first open the building is we're gonna run an audit and find out how many people did scan their cards. And then we'll just try and identify if there's anything fishy going on or any odd people checking in and some other things. So we'll kind of run an audit at the end of the, or that morning to see who checked in, just kind of get an idea who's coming at night. So that's our plan as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything? Otherwise, entertain a motion.
I move approval of resolution 7-1-2018A, awarding the security estimate for security contract to Tri-State.
I'll second.
Any comments? No comments? Roll call, please, Sue.
Herman,
Yes.
Broadbush,
Yes.
Rose,
Yes.
West,
Yes.
Weezer.
Yes.
Next item, resolution 7-1-2019B, providing new stop sign locations within the city of Vernon, Iowa. Chris?
Adding basically two controlled intersections, one being at 15th Avenue Southwest and 6th Street Southwest. That's where some of the curb roads in Stonebrook come back and meet. But 15th Avenue will be, for the most part, a straight shot until the entire road network of Stonebrook gets put through there. So we've had a request from a neighboring property owner, and staff has looked at it. Concurs. We do have one existing stop sign on 6th Street Southwest, even though it's mentioned in here again. So we were just sure that it's mentioned in two resolutions. So 4 stop signs total, 3 that will have to be put in.
Is the ultimate plan with this area for 15th to extend north?
No.
Okay, so it's intended to
15th will
terminate
stop
where-
at 3rd.
Okay,
The next street over, so the street that will actually get put in last, the last north-south in Stonebrook 2, is designed to go all the way to
so
Bryan.
kind of a minor trunk or whatever it would be
Yep.
called, okay, gotcha. All right.
It's also the most expensive because half of the initial part of the construction has no lots on the opposite side, so it will be the last thing that gets put in.
I just, my only concern was if that was the intention, then later on we decide we're gonna take these out or something, because it's gonna be more, but, okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Do developers present plats with that type of signage in it? Did we expect that earlier, or is that our
Not
responsibility?
necessarily. The developer's on the hook for the signage that we designate. In this situation, I would say the original developers of Stonebrook would have known this was designed to be the necessary arterial, but because it's kind of a straight shot, I do see a lot of high school
Yeah.
kids traffic, and when Stonebrook 2 will likely take at least 10 years to fill up, until that next section is actually constructed, this will be the one that's getting utilized. Same thing with Bryant, you know, we know that next segment is going to eventually meet up to Bryant. We have 2 huge hurdles to overcome before that happens. One is the intersection with First Street. The second will be Bryant Road itself because it's narrow right now. So
Yeah.
we have to be cognizant of that as we're approving plats and working with the development group. But in this instance, this was kind of an afterthought. Originally too, when they brought the subdivision forward, they were going to attempt to buy the park. And this would have alleviated traffic and they were gonna phase it differently. But when they left the park in there and now they've rephased the development, you know, you have kind of everything starting on the east half moving west, and they were kind of moving, you know, the original development had it starting on the south and moving to the north. So that's kind of how the whole process changed.
In that case, I would move approval of resolution 7-1-2019B, the addition of stop signs as designated.
A second.
Any comments? No comments, roll call please, Sue?
West,
Yes.
Herman,
Yes.
Rose,
Yes.
Broadbush,
Yes.
Weezer.
Yes.
Next item, resolution 7-1-2019C, approving a gas pipeline easement onto Interstate Power and Light Company.
This is a small 5-foot easement that's basically running along our property line, so we're not gonna build anything that close to the property line. And runs right through the athletic complex. It's part of an overall upgrade program that Alliant has been in the process of working on, so staff sees no reason not to approve this.
Where on here would the parking lot be? Is that like, is the easement right at the?
So they've already come out on Webster, the parking lot.
Is the parking lot further south than what we're
Yeah.
looking at here? Okay, all right. Oh, this is further, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, gotcha, never mind. Okay.
This is the only area, this area and one other location, they're still trying to finalize that line, but, is the only area where they could stay within existing easements.
I would make a motion to approve resolution 7-1-2019C. Yes.
I'll second.
Any comments?
One quick comment, just with the note that we
Oh,
have the
yes,
new
new resolution was handed out,
resolution in hard copy.
because it does not.
It does not impede, yes.
That's important.
Yeah.
Changes.
Well, one word,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Roll call, please.
Rose,
Yes.
Weisler,
Yes.
West,
Yes.
Herman,
Yes.
Brattlebus.
Yes.
Next resolution 7-1-2019D, approving plat survey 2337 within the Spring Meadow Heights subdivision.
so this is the first plat under that ordinance that you adopted at the last meeting, but, this is for the 5.13 acres that we had planned to purchase for eventual soccer fields, and you'll notice that little crazy angle that comes down. That's because the other portion, or the other half of that angle, is a stormwater detention basin that will be given to us at a later date, so we're not going to buy it. But when this is all said and done, we'll have this kind of nice L-shaped, almost 8-acre green space on top of a park that we've already dedicated further to the south. So I know it looks odd, but in the end, it'll work out into a nice, even parcel of land. We get this plat approved, then we can finalize and close on the ground, and again, the goal being, if everything works at the old public works site, as far as us doing the work with that dozer, then we would either do it this fall or maybe even in the spring. The same over here, because it was $50,000 to basically trade this to what it needs to be.
So this is soccer fields and,
Yeah, so the
Green
one
space.
thing that Matt's really lacking right now is soccer fields, and we are, the school district has been gracious enough to allow us to use the interior of the track.
I definitely don't want to turn this into a match.
Yeah, whatever.
it's been juggling or something.
But, you know, we're right now in our spring season because all the ball fields are being used. We've got to pull it off of our ball fields. In the fall, we use the baseball diamonds for our soccer because baseball isn't very popular in the fall. So we're just looking for a space to take all those kids' fields and put them somewhere. And this is a logical place to do that.
This is going to be the 2 tiers.
Yeah, 2-tier
And-
one.
So you think you're playing there next fall?
Well, it all depends on, you know, what.
Here's
Oh,
the-
next fall? This fall?
Nick certainly doesn't expect you to be
Next fall?
I was gonna say, Nick, where's?
Well, so the
You get
fall,
like half
the
of
fall
it.
we play,
If you
yeah,
want
we would play the ball fields however long we can. In the spring is when we would utilize it the most.
Yeah.
We've got 2 more weeks for renting that dozer, right?
At
Maybe
least.
next month.
I would say
Don't
don't,
for 65. Look at those.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Mother Nature doesn't realize.
I do anticipate it, but I've seen Nick pull off some really amazing things.
No pressure, Matt show.
Politics at its best, right there. Off the
Just being
record.
honest.
Anybody else have any other questions?
I move approval of resolution 7-1-2019B, the plot of survey for the Spring Meadow Heights subdivision.
I'll second that.
Any comments? Roll call, please, Sue.
Weisler,
Yes.
Rose,
Yes.
Brattlebus.
Yes.
West,
Yes.
Herman.
Yes.
All right, move on to old business. Discussion and consideration of change order number 18, Foster Burris Family Community Wellness Center.
I'll make a motion to table it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
So I think the most important map is the one on the very back that Ron just kind of roughly sketched out all the areas that failed. So you can see specifically what had to be cored out and new rock brought in.
Pretty much everything.
Yeah.
So when we say it failed, these are like load bearing tests, or what are we
Yeah,
talking
so
about?
they basically, when they
Dump truck.
do what they call a roll test, they load a dump truck and they drive over it and see how much compression and movement happens. It's not unusual on Stonebrook too. There were 3 areas between the two that had to be cored out, so it's not just this site. But the good news is, we have Ron here that's out there making sure the tests are being done, and if they're an independent third party, so we know that even though we're paying for it, I'd rather pay for it now
Yeah.
than have our new parking lot start to break up because nobody was there to do the testing.
And it would happen.
So, you know, this change order, is just over $6,000. We'll have another one where the gym floors are that they're doing right now. That'll be almost $10,000. We're still, even with those 2 change orders, I want to say we're right around 270,000. So we used about 110,000 of the 385. So we're still sitting really, really good.
And this is money more than well spent.
Yeah.
We'll spend a fraction now or a lot
Yeah.
later.
I'll move to approve change order number 18.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Motion for approval, consideration of claims list. Anybody have anything?
Everybody's happy July 1, everybody can start spending money again. Stu gave me this stack of checks this morning to sign, and I about cried.
No.
In the auto pen.
I would make a motion to approve the claims list as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, discussion consideration of space needs study for future police station, OPN Architects.
We discussed this once before. The only caveat to this is we'd ask that you approve the space needs study at $26,500 pending staff approval to move forward. So there's some other things that are in play. I could probably sit on this for at least 30 to 60 days. I just don't want to have to bring it back to council. I think the price is good. I don't think OPN is going to change anything, even if I have them sit on it for 60 days, but I want some of these other things to kind of play themselves out first, and then we'll potentially move forward with this. And what I would do is, if you're talking about motion, is approve this pending city administrator and mayor approval to move forward at a later date. So that there's 2 sets of eyes looking at this.
In that case, I would move approval of the space needs study with the caveat that Chris just mentioned. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, discussion consideration of professional services agreement with Trail System, Lester Burge Family Community Wellness Center project.
So HBK has actually already designed a small portion of this trail as part of the wellness center that goes from the wellness center to the high school. And it only made sense for us to continue with them. We can't bid it as the same project or do this as an alternative, but there are some consistencies we would maintain by keeping the same design professionals. So the percentage is in line with the rest of the projects, so. Sorry, the fee is $13,950.
I move approval of the professional services agreement for the Trails at the Wellness Center, awarded to HBK Engineering. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, discussion consideration of pay application number 3 First Street and Fifth Avenue traffic signal project.
They, moved in and have been going like gangbusters. As complicated as it's been, I've been really excited because we've been able to keep the intersection open the entire time. People have had to adjust, but, they've been able to keep it open, and just about everything is poured. They got, some other things formed up besides the sidewalks. And, the goal being, obviously, this project needed to be done, or hopefully be done by the time Cornell started back up and the school started. So, this change order, or not this change order, this pay application is in the amount of $38,302.81. And then you have the cover letter from B&K approving the quantities.
I would move to pay application number 3 on the First Street, Fifth Avenue traffic signal project.
A second.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, discussion consideration of the streets sound proposal. Music for your Main Street.
So CDG has proposed buying this speaker system for the downtown. We would still have to find locations for these areas, but the first thing would be to do is, wherever it sits, it'll be within the city right away, so we need to ask permission whether or not the council would be on board with this purchase, and not have CDG purchase it if we can't put it in the area.
What would we be responsible for?
It'll be sitting on some of our infrastructure, likely.
I mean, do we have to run the wires or make sure?
No, it's a Bluetooth system from the sound of it. There is a,
But obviously they'll have to be plugged in or they'll be
I
charged.
think there'll be a site where they have to load the music, that I'm assuming CDG would be responsible for as well. What are we gonna be responsible for? The phone calls. So I would say this, Matt and Heather reached out to the city of Belle Plaine, who has the system, and the administrator there did not say that they had any issues with it. I think this would have to go up with the understanding that, number one, they needed to talk to the business owners and residents of the downtown, depending on where these are gonna be located, and then be cognizant of, those areas. But CDG runs 90% of the festival towns downtown, so I'd imagine
That's when it would be used mainly, is just for those.
On the notes here, I'm only seeing 2 speakers listed. Is that all they're proposing to buy?
Yeah, can I get a minute to talk about this? Because I
Yes.
feel like something's been lost in translation here. Okay. So I think at a previous council meeting, when I was talking about my visit to Seattle, I talked about, that I saw this and it might be a cool idea. So I also presented it to the CDG board because I sit as liaison on the CDG board. And the reason that it was brought up even was that the CDG has funding available. And I thought that this would be something that's very tangible, that if the public saw a change like this, it would be a very visible difference to the downtown area, especially for events. So there was never an intention that these would be used in music blasting out full bore on a day-to-day 24/7 basis or anything like that. The purpose for something like this would be not only for the entertainment purposes, for being able to announce winners of drawings, for example, on Small Business Saturday, or for being able to say, we've got a small child with the name of Vanessa who is lost, please, find her at the visitor center. Those sorts of things, okay? So from a safety perspective, there's a potential for that. What I said when I gave this to the design team was, this is one idea, and the only reason I talked to these people was that they happened to have it in Anamosa, and they happened to, so I'm talking to a guy in Seattle who said our company put these up in Anamosa, and he put them in Belle Plaine. And I was like, well, that's cool because those are close to us, so let's check it out. But when I presented it, I said, guys, I have no idea if this is the right system. I have no idea if this is really what we want. I just think that we should research it. And I was the one that wrote down there, the cost for 2 speakers on a pole is a ballpark of $1,900.
Okay.
And the transmitter, it's hard to read right there, is $850.
So what I gave you, the reason I gave you, because it has some question and answer, not
Yeah.
because of necessarily.
Okay, that was my only concern.
So here's the thing, I'm not advocating one way or
I just don't
another.
want people to
Yeah.
take it literally that it has to be.
I think the
this
reason
one.
that I'm asking the question, because it makes no sense for CDG to look into this further if the council says, we don't want this in our right of way. So my question back to you really is less about, you know, saying we're gonna go out and do this, and more about we would be okay with a system pending kind of all of these other items. Number one being, I don't have specific sizes, depending on whether or not we go with this or another. If you look at some of the poles downtown, there's a lot of stuff that's already on them, including flower baskets and banners, so.
And it's possible that when they're watering those flower baskets, that could be a problem with these speakers sitting there, so,
Well,
you
you
know, I
can see in
know
the photo that there's a water basket.
that in
hanging.
this
Right.
case, they're underneath it,
Well,
so,
that
you
would
know.
make sense.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No.
Well, I've been to, so every year we take a vacation and we go to a small town in northern Minnesota. And they do a weekly festival because it's all resorts. And it's the big fundraiser for all the Lions host one week and, you know, all the big fundraiser. And they have speakers mounted on, it's only a block long. So I bet they have 4 on each side of the street. And the nice thing is when, as opposed to say like Chalk Walk, where we have one set of speakers at one end of the street. And if you want to hear it 3/4 of the way up the block, you have to blast the heck out of somebody standing right in front of them. You get the sound nice and even up and down the whole street. So I like the clarification on the specifics, I appreciate that. But in theory, I am thoroughly in favor of us looking at and doing something along these lines. Because I think for the number of festivals we have uptown, we would find ample use to make them an excellent investment for us.
And I should clarify, when I said we'll get the phone calls, it wasn't because I expected us to be blasting anything, it'll just be associated with
Yeah.
us, so.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
and that's fair.
So I don't, I mean,
I-
when I answered that question, it wasn't, I'm just basically simply saying that
I'll go there.
right now, the one thing that we will get is if somebody does happen to complain about them in the future, they'll call us.
And the nice thing is they can add speakers as needed. You know, it's not just you buy 2 and that's all you get. I'm sure 2 will probably not be enough.
Nick was really hoping to find something bad about these.
Well, so I'll jump on that a little bit quick in a second. I'm concerned that doing this, while I understand the safety aspect and I fully appreciate that, and in the context perhaps of an event where there's a band, perhaps that's appropriate. But we also have people who do other things outside of the course of what's going on the main street, where this would directly infringe upon their business opportunities going on. Outdoor bands in back of the local, you know, things like that. So I just want us to be cognizant of what we're supporting or what we're not. And to that end, do we as a council or we as a city body need to help put some guidance in place to make sure everybody understands the rules?
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I mean,
I think you could simply make a statement that I can go back to Joe with is, there's interest here. We want to see the parameters,
Yeah.
what the speaker system is, what are the dimensions, you know, pluses
we
and
need to do
minuses.
due diligence.
Yeah, so we, you know, I guess from my perspective, I would put this back on Joe and CDG to come up with all of the questions, and then, once we have some of those answered, then come back in front of the council and say, these are the parameters they're suggesting, can you live with them? Because the one thing that I would request as well, depending on where we decide to put these, is, you know, we do have people that live uptown, and probably not going to be affected all that often by them, but if we happen to put one out somebody's bedroom window, then I typically have Joe, when it affects that 3-block area, kind of talk to the building owners and the patrons and say, this is what's happening, are you okay with it? So, I
At the
kind of
same
remind,
time,
yeah,
these would probably be used during the events we already have.
Correct.
At which
Yeah.
point, those people are accustomed to having some
They're not gonna be going
noise.
off at
But-
7 o'clock in the
you know,
morning.
But to Deb's point, I think we do need to have set guidelines about when they're gonna be used, what the hours are, who makes final determination about what's appropriate, what's not, what gets said, like, you know, I mean, you don't want just any yahoo who's 6
Yes.
beers deep grabbing a microphone, you know, I mean,
Yes, that-
you know, I mean, it's gonna
that's
happen.
absolutely
So,
right.
you know, just to have that outlined as to who's in charge of what, and to be able to answer those questions and have it set before. we
yes, and
start
this
certain
is not even,
Right.
this was, again, literature that I had, but it had the question and answer to give you
Yeah.
some, at least
Yeah.
a starting point. So if there's interest, then I would say CDG, go ahead and keep working. If there's not, then I would say this idea is probably dead upon arrival, and you can kind of go about this if you'd like, but
So what are the concerns or pros or thumbs up, thumbs down out there?
Yeah, I think we need to be able to give
You've touched on it,
CDG direction.
from my point. Our city noise ordinance is very, very vague,
Yes, it is.
and it's been very, very vague for a reason, for that purpose. It just takes one complaint. Outdoor speakers, softball diamond, baseball diamond, we get complaints occasionally about the playlists that are being played through them, and different events like that, even when people buy a house right next to the softball diamond that was already there, and kind of going through from there. So, we've had several calls and working with Cornell to, you know, this is appropriate, these are the timeframes, and kind of going through from there, but it all takes a new coach, or all of a sudden the coach isn't there and the players, grab a hold of the controls and kind of go through from there. So, all good points. You hit on about everything that I was going through. Placement, you know, if it's right, as Chris stated, you know, if it's up above the water basket, that means it's right by the second-story windows. We're getting close to those too, so you're gonna have concerns with residents, so that would be mine. Like I said, I think the city needs to have a firm control,
Yeah.
of how it's used and when it's used, so.
I'm a little twitchy when it comes to public display of sound, of street sounds, if you will, whether it's chimes or whether it's
Bells.
speakers or bells like this. So let's go into it with eyes wide open. Yes, not twitchy.
well, there's no necessarily, I mean, I put discussion and consideration. I think from a consensus standpoint, from what I'm seeing, is we're okay to let them continue to
Yeah.
research and maybe put some more parameters to it that we can consider, but definitely not an overwhelming,
Yeah,
yes, let's move
there's some
forward.
concern,
Yeah,
but overall you have what you need.
I believe so.
Well, it's kind of like, one of the things that I was responsible with was writing the social media guidelines for CDG. And we have to have guidelines written for this as well. And, you know, for the same purpose. We didn't want anybody on our Facebook page or visit MDL site just saying whatever they felt at that given moment. And, you know, but we need to make sure that it properly represented the views of the organization. So that's the same kind of thing that we should have in place for this.
Anybody else? Okay. Next one, discussion and consideration of F-250 purchase, Public Works.
So Nick has given you a memo kind of outlining the differences in the purchases, but I also put in the report, we had originally talked about putting a jetback, buying a jetback system in this CIP. After they did their research on that unit, the $40,000 unit that they had talked about buying was going to serve basically a single purpose, and that would be a pothole for utilities when we're going out and digging. If they go up to a larger machine, it will actually benefit us in cleaning some sewers on occasion that we can clean. Would save some dollars with Roto-Rooter, but it is a double or so what we were talking about buying. So that purchase has been put on hold for a later date, just given the overall cost of the equipment that they've got in front of them. So that opened the door then to make this upgrade from a F-150, which was in the CIP, to an F-250. And next year, if you have any questions.
I have a question, I'm thinking, what was that term that was used? The service body,
Yes.
what is that? I have no, I have no visual.
So we actually brought that to you, I don't know, 6 months ago, when the wastewater department wanted to do the same thing with one of their trucks. So you no longer have just a basic toolbox, or like the regular box that you see on a pickup truck.
Right,
Now it's got the doors, so our guys can get tools more efficiently.
Okay.
The bigger the trucks get, they're getting taller. It's a toolbox you can't even see in, so now you gotta jump in the back of the box. So on top of being convenient for those guys to find all their tools, it's just more a safety thing in the end. They're very expensive, I understand that, but a couple of our guys in our department, they came from different cities that a lot of their trucks had that service body on it, and they could set up their truck how they would prefer to, set up each truck. And we're trying to get to a point to where each crew member kind of has a truck assigned to them. So this will allow us to get to one pickup per person. We're going to push the 150 another year. We think we can do that. And then that kind of allows each guy to set up their truck how they see fit. And when they're out in the field, they're more efficient when they know where their tools are. We're not always sending both two guys to each location. So, and quite honestly, in the spring, once the seasonal staff comes on, and now we have someone reading meters for us, we're always looking for pickup trucks. It's tough. So, and sending them out in those little utility dump trucks, there's no spot on those for tools. When you put the box up, then all your tools, if you do have a toolbox on there, they're in a pile. So it's trying to just get us more efficient.
It really goes back to the old adage of seeing a city employee drive out there, get out of their vehicle, look at the problem, hop back in their vehicle and drive away. And everybody's going, what are you doing?
That's my.
Well, we have to come, we have to come out there, we have to figure out what we're looking at, and then go back in and get a bunch of tools. So we really have
Right.
tried to move to kind of an efficiency. The bigger that, as Montgomery continues to grow, will we be able to have a vehicle per employee? No. But right now, we're asking 6 people to be kind of a jack of all trades. So we do have a great crew that allows that to happen, but if I don't have to call in 2 people, because one person doesn't have to necessarily go back to the shop and grab a bunch of stuff that they already have there on their truck, it's beneficial. We have individuals that we know it's easier to call out for specific items. So if we have a water main break, we have a couple of people that have worked on water main breaks a lot, so we tend to try and call them out, and they have all of their stuff on that truck. So there's a method to this madness, but really, like I said, it's interesting to the sound. It is kind of cliche, but that's really what happens. Somebody will drive out, we'll look at the hole, and then go back and get what we actually need.
And part of that still may happen if you need barricades and stuff like that, but a lot of it is just getting us more efficient to, if we get called up here for something simple, we don't have the right wrench on our truck. Ideally, we're going to get to that point to where we have most of those hand tools available, and we can, be in and out a lot quicker.
Is this a model moving forward?
So this is kind of,
F-150s?
this is kind of, no, we'll still stick with some F-150s, but this is kind of a trial basis on, the wastewater department has 2 of these pickup trucks. They've been telling us for years that we need to do this. But now that we have 2 gentlemen on staff from different cities that in their streets department, they had these trucks. And they said they want to try this because that's just kind of their background and how they like to set up that pickup. Now, I still see a need for that box sometimes when we're grabbing brush, whatever it may be, that more open box, more room to haul stuff. We're still going to need that, but we keep a ton of little things that you would just never imagine on those trucks, between valve wrenches and shovels and, like he said, jack of all trades, so. This is kind of a trial model. If it goes well for this person, maybe the next time we exchange out a bigger truck, we would look into this, the possibility of it. So I still see a huge need for the F-150s because there are many times that we're still driving around, hey, someone said this is our tree or whatever it may be, and we gotta go check that out. And, you know, I still see a need for those smaller trucks.
What's the 29,190?
That would be the price of the F-250.
So there's 41,675 at the bottom.
That's all the dealership's numbers and how they come up with the
Our
government.
price is 29.
The government price is 29.
And then when you throw the 10, it comes out to close to 40.
Yes, close. In the little write-up, we're spending about 17,000 more than what we had originally budgeted for the F-150, so. And I like to keep Chris on his toes, because I knew we had 40,000 that we weren't going to spend, so.
They don't have short memories. None of them have short memories.
And this is actually, I actually called Mitch on this because I said, well, we just purchased an F-250 when we replaced the one diesel truck that needed $10,000 worth of work. It went up $1,000, and I said, this is the same year, same model, what's going on? And they said, we luckily got in under like a $1,000 deal that Ford was putting on, and I can't believe they actually shared that with a government agency at that time, so it did go up $1,000 or so more than the last F-250. It's pretty much outfitted the same.
What amount of tariffs? Anybody have any other questions for Nick, Chris?
Do we do a thing then?
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, you never
Do
know if
things.
these are, I had to move approval of the purchase of the F-250 for the Public Works Department as outlined in the memo.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Next item, city employees volunteering for EMS service.
So I've asked Jake to be here tonight because this is an idea that he kind of proposed to us as he not only looks at the city but other employers in the city of Mount Vernon, just trying to get more drivers, more EMS individuals at kind of our odd hours, I'll call it, of the day. There's a couple things that I wanted to put in front of you. Number one, this does have some HR complications. Not necessarily complications, but I think understandings that the council needs to be aware of. So, you have two options moving forward if we allow employees to do this. Number one is just pay them their normal wage. So, for instance, if Nick goes out on a call, you're paying him as a public works director to go out on that call. The alternative would be to require him to take PTO or time off for the hours that he would go on that call, which I think would actually detract or deter people from wanting to go that route. So you have to understand when somebody goes, you know, I saw Nick going by on the ambulance, why? You have to be prepared to answer those questions. The second, with rank and file employees, there could be an overtime issue on continuation of schedules. So if they happen to get a call out at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and they don't get back till 6, that's a continuation of time. So they would be subject to overtime potentially that. Now, Jake is only proposing or asking for 1 12-hour shift per week.
Yeah, so our daytime coverage at this time, and I don't foresee this necessarily changing, actually isn't bad. Daytimes isn't necessarily one of the times we need people, you know, we're begging or anything like that, because we have a lot of the college kids, we have myself, who's there, you know, essentially Monday through Friday, as well as we have a part-timer we can kind of float around. But what I am looking for is the ability to have somebody in town for when we need the second truck. You know, typically that's not an issue. It doesn't get used very often, but over the last 2 years, we've seen the need for a second truck increase about 30%. So we're seeing it used about 50 to 60 times a year for a variety of things, whether that's paramedic intercepts, standbys, and obviously the second 911 calls. I can take last Wednesday as an example. We responded to 6 911 calls, 5 of which were within the time of like 9:30 till 4 o'clock or so.
In the morning to the, like during the day?
Yeah, so right during the day, five ambulance calls. We put a request out for our second ambulance twice. The first time we didn't have anybody available, so we ended up taking that call from Cedar Rapids. We had already interacted with that patient that morning. We kind of knew what was going on. It wasn't time sensitive, time critical. And we were on our way back from Cedar Rapids. So by the time we would get mutual aid coming and all that radio communication would have been going through, we would have arrived back sooner anyway. The second call, I had luckily turned over care to a lower level care crew because it was, again, not a very acute patient, a patient that could go with a lower acute or a lower certified crew. I was hoping to get some stuff in the office. Well, about 5 minutes after they left town, we got paged for a very critical call north of town. And I was the only one who was available, but luckily we have a fire department that's very active that was able to assist, as well as the police department. So what I'm looking for is somebody who can come volunteer 1 day a week, just to make sure that they're in the system, that they're staying current with patient care, our operations, and are familiar with the ambulance. 6 calls a day is not very typical for us. It's usually 1, maybe 2, or we go a couple days without anything. And then really just to have somebody around during the day, just one more person who could potentially be wearing a pager and have something that's not so time critical that they can come and respond on an ambulance call with us.
I know this was discussed once before in talking with my staff at City Hall. So I have a different take on this. I will gladly field those phone calls from people asking me why my staff is hopping on an ambulance. For somebody that's had to use one before, for my daughter, I think coverage throughout those shifts is very important. I would even volunteer to drive, not necessarily sit in the back, but...
Did you get that in writing?
But I think the important thing, you know, EMS service is not considered an essential service by the state of Iowa. However, I would say if you ask anybody in the city of Mount Vernon whether or not it's an essential service, the answers will definitely be yes. So I commend Jake and the ambulance board for the last year on making some significant changes down there as far as just the operations go. And if by you, the city council, stating that you're okay with this policy of allowing us to do this, it sparks interest from the community as well to do the same, then I think it was an opportunity well served. So we're already talking about limiting this to once a week where this would potentially occur. Again, I personally would rather someone from City Hall or someone from Public Works hop on that ambulance. The chief and police officers have before hopped in and drove the ambulance. That not only takes the ambulance out, but it then takes our officer out. So my preference would be that somebody else do this.
And this isn't something new or revolutionary to a lot of cities. If you take even Mechanicsville, for example, their city clerk is an EMT on the ambulance service. And if it wasn't for her, there's a lot of days they wouldn't have an ambulance service. As that comes from having a couple of different meetings with them over things, as well as jumping in with them as a paramedic. While I was doing studies up in Wisconsin on different deployment methods for volunteer EMS to make sure small towns could have an ambulance service. That was one thing that was very seriously looked at by a lot of communities, was utilizing city employees and even giving preference to EMTs or people who are already trained as EMTs for city positions with the understanding they would respond. So it's being done other places. It's just something I would like to bring here as well.
I think it just makes sense, right? Small town, you wear many hats, right? You work for a small company, you wear many hats. I think it's a great idea.
Is there interest from city employees? Have we
So,
talked about that?
at the last staff meeting, I put that out to department heads to see if they had any interest. And I'm in all seriousness, I mean, if it came down to hopping in, I would, we're already certified in CPR and some other things, so I'd go through the certification, hop in and drive if I needed to. And again, having been in government work for 19 years and then knowing everything that I know, I still made every critical mistake in the situation that happened with Charlie that you could if she swallowed a penny and we took off on our own. And we were halfway to the hospital before we had an ambulance that can finally meet us. So I think we're close enough to Cedar Rapids, Marion, that people expect when they call 911 in that scenario that their response times are going to be similar to what you would see in Cedar Rapids. I think if you live a little bit further out or rural, then you kind of come with this expectation that maybe the call is going to take some time. But again, I would gladly give a couple hours of my employees' time if it helps save somebody's life. So,
From a legal standpoint, is the city in the scenario where one of Nick's guys is out and they're doing what they're doing and they get a call and they come in and they drive or they're in the back or what, you know, somehow they're involved. If we go back to your point about a continuation of service, is the city liable in any way for something that happens as a part of that?
the city's already a partner in the ambulance.
Right.
So if somebody's going to sue, they're going to sue us anyway.
But do they have a better case if the guy driving the ambulance?
I'm not an
plows
attorney,
in?
but
No, I know, but
I would say no.
Right.
I would say in that instance, it's no different than, you working for.
Right, even if you work for Neil Soft Water and you get in the van, in the ambulance and you, right, exactly. I would rather we ask the attorney or, just.
Yeah, I will make sure there aren't any
before.
hiccups. The only thing that, when it comes to insurance, where I could see a potential issue is work comp.
Sure.
Because they could probably file if it's, and it's gonna be such a strange thing. If their shift ends at 4:30 and they walk out and get a call at 4:35, it's not a continuation of shift.
But if
They've
it's
already left.
4:25.
Yeah, so, but if it's 4:25, then yes. And I do think there is some risk there, and I can double check, but I wanted to make sure that there was not a significant amount of opposition to doing something like this. Again, it was discussed a few years back, and it didn't seem like it took, so I always assume maybe there's a backstory to that. But I think, personally, like I said, in that situation, and there was a tragic event that happened this weekend, I think anybody being able to respond is a plus that we probably take for granted.
It'd be a good problem to have if there were several city employees that were interested
Yeah.
to allow a situation where you could make the decision of who goes,
Right.
who's best suited at that point in time to be on the call.
Absolutely, and that's kind of what I look at, is the more people we have in town that are trained, are on our roster, and are willing to respond, the better the chance that we're gonna get 2 ambulances out the door when we need them, which could literally make a life or death difference. I can tell you for the call north of town, it absolutely would have. And so that's really what I'm looking for, and I want to limit the amount of times that we're pulling them out of the office or from their duties, because that's not fair to the city or other employers. And so that's why that limitation is there.
I think it's a great idea, Jason.
Thank you, Jim.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course, I assume if we had anybody that was hourly part of the union, we'd have to have a conversation. that point as well, maybe amend some language or add language to the contract to cover that.
I'm guessing the sidebar agreement.
Yeah. Okay, anybody else?
We have the HR guy.
It would
You
come
can
up.
always, you can always know an HR Jamie can say.
It would come up. Especially if overtime was involved. All right, anything from our report perspective? Just remind everybody, this is July 4th weekend, so be safe, be smart. Right, chief?
Take your fireworks out of town.
No, yes, fireworks, yes. Can't forget fireworks.
We're a disguise.
Yeah.
Cheering your neighbors,
Having said that, I have the Benadryl ready for my dog.
Yeah, hiding in the bathtub. Anything from council committee?
I would mention that I think it's time that I'm going to reestablish the sustainability committee come fall. So if anybody has issues that need to come before that group, consider that. We'll take those come fall, and I'll get that notice out again about that. I did, second thing was I did a water quality panel, but as did Councilperson Herman, and she asked a very good question about, it was largely focused on ag, water quality and so on. But asked the question about what the municipalities do, and reference the two projects that we've got going on at our sewer treatment plant and so on. And, so it was very interesting. There was a pile of people there that attended that. So.
Good.
I was surprised that there wasn't more focus on, I mean, and the speaker said that we could stop putting on de-icer and getting the chemicals for lawn, but by scale, it's not as much as, unfortunately, what the ag industry kind of gets pegged with. Did I miss anything? I mean,
No, that's exactly that, and just be mindful when we design new driveways, new streets, new whatever, that, you know, permeable is good, you know, alternatives, right? So just be mindful, was kind of their advice. Yeah.
it's ready for mill papers, I think.
We did just have a housing commission meeting right before this. The time for application submittal is the month of July. And Heather is well versed in talking with people. She said she has had about 25 contacts with various people. 8 of them appear to be qualified under the guidelines of the grant. But a lot of interest from people in rental properties, which was an interesting twist. Obviously, that's not who it's geared towards. You know, advice is to, of course, get the property owner to apply, but.
Chris, I had a question for you. I forgot to ask when we met before the council meeting. Can you give a quick snapshot on where we are with the sidewalk program?
So Heather's completed the inspections. We had expected to have an intern help her. She never came back. So the plan is, she has made contact with B&K, and we hope to, again, start, probably get this wrong, but the northeast quadrant is the next step. So we'd like to go ahead and get those bid documents ready to go. We did feel like we made a kind of a mistake. We started pretty late in fall on the northwest quadrant. We got some of those sidewalks done in late November, early December, and it was getting a little cold. So, and then the contractor basically had to come back in the spring to finish up some of that work. I'd like it to start and stop all in one season if possible. So if all the paperwork gets done and it's the end of August or the first part of September, I'll probably hold off depending on how many sidewalk applications that come through that's going to have the city complete the work. The other caveat to that is Heather is expecting, so I may lose her for a little while between October, November, December, depending on when the baby finally comes. So I'm watching that timeline fairly close. I'd love to get it done this fall, so we'd have 2 quadrants done in 2 years, but we're close. It might be this spring of next year before the quadrant's done. Now, I will say that those are the 2 largest quadrants that we have, so that would take a significant amount of the community would be done.
Does that mean everything is done in the northwest quadrant that was supposed to?
No, so, we do have a spreadsheet of individuals that still have to,
On the naughty list?
most of those are rotation.
Yeah.
So,
So we are working that progress?
Correct.
Or process?
those will have to go through a separate individual process. We have to give them so much time to get it done, and then we can actually get it done and assessed. So, yeah.
Only for the northwest, or is that at all the quadrants?
It'll be all the quadrants moving forward.
Because
but-
southwest quadrant was the first one, and there's one rental property that's terrible. And for some reason, they have gotten by with not fixing it for 5 years now, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah, so the Northwest is where we started this kind of revamped
Right.
sidewalk program. And our goal is Northwest, Northeast, Southeast, Southwest, just making one full circle. But Southeast and Southwest might be able to handle it together in 1 year. But yes, we give them the process. If they don't do it, then we will go ahead and get it done, and then we will assess the property owner. And the only bad part is the city will sit on that debt until either they pay taxes or they sell the house.
But it'd be nice to, I hate to say, make an example of, but make
But the
an
work will be
example
done.
of.
Well, and-
So you're talking northeast this year, or maybe next spring,
Correct.
then we're gonna go southeast.
Well, we may do Southeast and Southwest together, because again, from a,
It gets off another 2 years though, I just
Well,
don't
we-
like that at all.
we had originally talked about doing one per year. So
Right.
if we do both of them together, then that would be
Yeah.
the 4-year period that we're talking about.
All right, good, I was just curious, because, yeah, walking the dog, there's a few rental properties that still haven't done anything, so I was curious. All right, anybody else? Chris, anything on your report you want to highlight?
No, the one thing that wasn't on my report is I will actually be out of the office next week, 2 days on vacation, and then 3 days at the ICMA Summer Conference in Decorah. So we got this packet done. I'm going to start on next week's packet, and I will have as much of the information in there as I can by the time I leave Friday the 5th. Be looking for emails from Marcia, because the packet will actually come out while I'm gone, and so whatever information she's gathered, it will come from Marcia that week. And then whatever is not in there, just understand that I will spend more time at the council meeting explaining those. But for the most part, I have a number of those items that will be on your next agenda in the folder already, so.
Anything else? All right, otherwise I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Take a quick little break here while we